Hello everyone. Today we are going to wrap up the Pentateuch and look at the next time period. So you can see the title of this slide, Wandering in the Desert. The Israelites will end up spending 40 years. There's that number 40 again in the wilderness on their way to the Promised Land. And we'll briefly cover the last three books of the Pentateuch, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We are entering a new time period, so after the golden calf incident, we'll see how these books pick up from there. And this period is known as the Desert Wanderings, and really the narrative book out of these three is the book of Numbers. So there's the book of Numbers, the Desert Wanderings time period, and you'll see Leviticus and Deuteronomy essentially bookend this time period in the book of Numbers. So Leviticus, the context for that particular book is prior to the book of Numbers and the wandering in the desert, and Deuteronomy is basically the end of that part of the story. So you can see a map here of the journey from Egypt and Goshen all the way down to Mount Sinai and up to the Promised Land, or right on the brink of the Promised Land, up north near Jericho and Jerusalem. So the Exodus, you can see where that takes place in the northern part of the Red Sea. And then the book of Leviticus is going to take place at the foot of Mount Sinai after the golden calf incident. And then the book of Numbers details this journey up north to the Promised Land, which ends at the, again, with the book of Deuteronomy on the brink of the Promised Land. So the book of Leviticus is essentially a priestly manual, and the title comes from the word Levites, so the tribe of the Levites, who become the priestly tribe because they were the only ones to step up and essentially denounce the worship of the golden calf. So when that incident happened, the Levites were against it, saying this isn't the right thing, and so they will now serve as the priests, and they will be known as the priestly tribe going forward. The book of Numbers picks up where Exodus left off at Mount Sinai. So Israel is going to spend some time at the foot of Mount Sinai after this golden calf incident. They spend a year and they celebrate the Passover before they depart for a fresh new start. So Moses will end up sending out some spies. He sends out 12 spies to go kind of check out and case out the Promised Land and see what it's all about. And 10 of those spies come back and they say, you know what, we can't do it. There are people in that land and we are not going to be able to take that land over. And Caleb and Joshua are the only ones who really stand out and step up and say, if we trust in the Lord, that we will be able to take over the Promised Land as God has promised. So that will kind of come into play later. And we'll see that actually Moses and his generation will never set foot in the Promised Land. It will be Caleb and Joshua who will lead the Israelites into the Promised Land later on. So the book of Deuteronomy, which means second law, is really the bookend of the Pentateuch. And it ends with the death of Moses and the Israelites on the brink of the Promised Land. And the word Deuteronomy means second law because Moses essentially repeats and reiterates all the laws, including the 10 Commandments that God has already revealed. And in the book of Deuteronomy, we have this famous line, this famous prayer: "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength." And that is known as the Shema, this famous prayer. And it's essentially, for our Jewish brothers and sisters, the equivalent for Christians would be the Our Father or the Lord's Prayer. It's that essential of a prayer, and really a foundational prayer for the Jewish people. And again, this is going to end with the death of Moses on the brink of the Promised Land. And the next book that we'll study after break is the book of Joshua. And we'll see Joshua lead the people into the Promised Land.